You know what your problem is? Coach Ray Dunbar picked up the scholarship application from his desk. Didn't read it. Didn't even glance at the second page. And held it up between two fingers like something he'd found stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Black girls from East Baltimore with a $200 million dream. He laughed once, short and flat. You don't embarrass yourself enough to know you should be embarrassed. He dropped it on the desk, leaned back in his chair, looked her up and down the way you look at something that wandered into the wrong room. You know what I see when I look at you? I see a girl whose mama works nights so she can throw a baseball at a brick wall and call it training. He tilted his head. That's not ambition, sweetheart. That's just not knowing your place. He picked the application back up, held her gaze. And $200 million? A slow smile. The worst kind. The kind that isn't angry, just certain. Baby, people like you don't make $200 million. People like you clean the offices of people who do. Then he tore it. Slow, deliberate, watching her face the whole time. The pieces fell to the floor. Zara Mitchell stood in that office, 13 years old, and did not blink. Did not breathe. Did not give him a single thing he was looking for. She bent down, picked up every torn piece, folded them into her pocket, and walked out. 6 months later, Tyler Holt, two-time All-Star, 390 career home runs, stood at the plate at Camden Yards. 38,000 people held their breath. 2 pitches, 2 strikes. Ray Dunbar watched from the stands, alone. The smile long gone. Don't scroll past this one. Drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? I read every single one. And if those 3 sentences just made your blood boil, hit subscribe, because what happened between that torn paper and that stadium will change the way you see everything. Baltimore moves differently in the summer, not slower, heavier. The heat comes off the asphalt in waves you can actually see, rising and bending the air above the street like the city itself is exhaling. Corner stores pull their iron gates half shut by noon. Fire hydrants crack open on Edmondson Avenue, and kids run through the spray in their school clothes because nobody has a pool and nobody pretends otherwise. The smell of the neighborhood in July is cut grass and exhaust, and something frying in a window 3 floors up. And underneath all of it, always, the faint metallic smell of the harbor 2 miles south. Zara Mitchell lived on the 3rd floor of a walk-up on Collington Avenue, East Side, in a 1-bedroom apartment that her mother had made feel like more than it was. Gloria Mitchell had a gift for that, taking small things and stretching them until they covered everything that needed covering. A second-hand couch with a quilt thrown over the worn arm. A kitchen table with mismatched chairs that somehow looked intentional. A corkboard by the front door where she pinned her rotating shift schedule, color-coded in 3 different markers, because if you couldn't control much, you controlled what you could. Gloria worked nights at Johns Hopkins. Not the main campus. The overflow clinic on Monument Street. The one that handled the patients the main building was too full to see. She left at 9 p.m. and came home at 7 a.m. and slept until noon and then started again. On her days off, she cooked enough food for 3 days and left it labeled in the refrigerator and sat at the kitchen table with her feet up and watched Zara throw. Because Zara threw every morning. 5:30 a.m. before the neighborhood woke up, before the heat settled in, before anything else. She went down the 3 flights of stairs and out the back door and stood in the narrow alley behind the building where someone had painted a chalk circle on the brick wall at the far end, 6 inches in diameter, at exactly strike zone height. She had painted it herself when she was 10. It had been repainted 4 times since. The brick was darker in a perfect circle from 3 years of a baseball hitting the same spot. She didn't have a pitching coach. She didn't have a training program, or a biomechanical analysis, or a $200 an hour private instructor. She had a beat-up Rawlings glove with a strip of duct tape reinforcing the thumb where the leather had split. A bucket of scuffed baseballs she'd collected from a batting cage 2 blocks over, whose owner let her keep the ones that went over the fence and the wall. Every morning, same circle, same wall. At 13, her fastball was clocking at 68 miles per hour. She didn't know this yet, not precisely, not with a number attached to it. She just knew the ball did what she told it to do. Mae Holloway knew the number. Mae was 71 years old and had lived on Federal Street for the past 40 years, in a house with a porch she never used, and a garage she used for everything. She ran a free pitching clinic out of the parking lot of Greater Grace Temple on Sunday mornings. Free because if she charged anything, nobody would come. And even free, most Sundays only 2 or 3 kids showed up. She brought the balls, brought the targets, set everything up at 7 a.m. and broke it down at 9 and did it again the next week. She had been doing it for 11 years. Mae didn't talk much about where the knowledge came from. If you pressed her, she'd say she played some ball a long time ago and let the conversation end there. She had a small black notebook she kept in the front pocket of whatever jacket she was wearing, and in it she wrote down things she observed. Velocity estimates, release points, wrist angles, the kind of notes that didn't belong to a woman running a free Sunday clinic in a church parking lot. The kind of notes that belonged to a professional scout. She had seen Zara throw for the first time 14 months ago. Not at the clinic. She'd been walking back from the corner store on Collington and heard the sound coming from the alley. That particular crack. The sound a ball makes when it hits exactly where you aimed it. Mae had stopped walking, stood at the mouth of the alley, watched 10 pitches without saying a word. Then she walked home and wrote one number in her notebook. 68. And underneath it, one word. Real. She introduced herself to Gloria the following Sunday. Didn't oversell it. Didn't make promises. Just said she'd like to work with Zara on Sunday mornings if that was all right. And Gloria had looked at her for a long moment, the look of a woman who had learned to measure people carefully before letting them close to her daughter, and said yes. For 14 months, Sunday mornings belonged to Mae and Zara. The parking lot, the chalk targets, the small black notebook filling up page by page. Mae taught her mechanics without breaking what was already working. She refined the release point. She added a cutter. She watched the velocity climb. 62, 64, 66, 68. She never mentioned the pitch she was saving for last. On a Tuesday morning in late June, Gloria sat across from Zara at the kitchen table with a piece of toast and a cup of coffee and said carefully, the way she said things she'd been turning over in her mind for a while, "Promise me you'll have a backup plan." Zara looked up from the baseball she was turning in her hands. She didn't say it unkindly. She said it the way you say something you've known for a long time and have finally decided is true enough to speak out loud. This is the plan. Gloria looked at her daughter for a moment. This 13-year-old girl with chalk dust on her sneakers and a split leather glove and an unshakable certainty that belonged to people twice her age and didn't argue. 3 days later, an envelope slid through the mail slot and landed on the floor by the front door. Elite Diamond Academy Youth Showcase. Scholarship application. Gloria picked it up, read it twice, set it on the kitchen table. Zara read it once. Then she picked up the phone and called Mae. What Mae said when she answered was not congratulations. It was not wonderful. It was 4 words, quiet and careful. The voice of a woman who had seen this road before and knew exactly where the rocks were. Read every word carefully. Why did Mae say that? What did she know about Elite Diamond Academy that the scholarship letter wasn't telling them? 3 miles north of Collington Avenue, the city changed its mind about itself. The streets got wider. The trees got older. The kind of trees that take 60 years to grow that thick, which meant 60 years of someone deciding they were worth protecting. The sidewalks were clean in a way that wasn't accidental. The houses had garages, and the garages had doors that worked, and the driveways had cars that hadn't been moved in 3 days because there was a second car for that. Elite Diamond Academy sat on 4 acres off Roland Avenue, behind a gate with the Academy's logo embossed in brushed steel. 32,000 square feet of climate-controlled training space, 6 indoor batting tunnels, a pitching lab with pressure plates in the mound, and biometric sensors that tracked arm angle and hip rotation to within half a degree. A recovery suite with cold plunge pools and massage tables. A trophy hallway, 40 feet long, lit from behind like a museum exhibit, lined with regional championships and national placements, and framed photographs of alumni currently playing at the collegiate and professional level. Annual tuition, $8,000, not including equipment, not including the mandatory coaching clinics, not including the travel fees for showcase tournaments. The scholarship fund, 1 slot, fully subsidized, awarded annually to a deserving athlete from an underserved community, had been established 4 years ago by a corporate sponsor who wanted a line item in their ESG report. It had been awarded twice, both times to players who, upon closer inspection, lived in zip codes that were underserved in name only. Ray Dunbar had been running the academy for 7 years. He was 44, broad-shouldered, with the particular confidence of a man who had almost made it and had spent every year since building a world where almost didn't show. He had pitched 3 seasons in the minor leagues before a shoulder injury ended his career at 26. His father had money, old Baltimore money, the kind that came from commercial real estate and didn't ask too many questions about itself. And when Ray came home from his 3rd surgery, his father bought him the academy as something to do. Ray was good at running it. He had a gift for making wealthy parents feel that their investment in their children's baseball future was also, somehow, an investment in excellence itself, in standards, in discipline, in the correct order of things. He used the word integrity the way some people use seasoning, on everything, in quantities that stopped meaning anything. His son Brandon was 13, the same age as Zara, and pitched for the academy's top youth team. Brandon had decent mechanics. His arm angle was clean and his footwork was consistent, but his velocity had plateaued at 58 miles per hour for the past 8 months, and his accuracy on breaking balls was, charitably, a work in progress. His private coach, who charged $220 an hour and came 3 times a week, had recently suggested, carefully, that Brandon might benefit from focusing on off-field leadership development. Ray had not passed this suggestion on to Brandon. Brandon had never been told no in any language he recognized. Not by a coach, not by a teammate, not by the batting practice pitchers Ray hired to throw exactly what Brandon wanted to see. He was not a bad kid, not yet, not entirely. He was a kid who had been arranged into a particular shape by a particular world, and the shape the world had made of him did not leave a lot of room for anyone who didn't fit the same mold. Mae had known about Elite Diamond Academy for 4 years. She had sent 2 kids there, both boys, both from the East Side, both with real arms and real work ethics and real need for the kind of training the academy could provide. The first one lasted 6 weeks before Ray found a reason to reassign his scholarship slot. The second one never made it past the application review. Mae had called the admissions office 3 times. The 3rd time, someone picked up and told her the program was currently at capacity for scholarship consideration. This was in February. The scholarship was advertised as open through April. She didn't tell Zara any of this when she called. She just told her to read every word carefully, and then she told her to bring the application to the church parking lot Sunday morning. Sunday morning, Mae read the application twice, slowly, in her reading glasses, while Zara did warm-up throws against the far wall. Then Mae took out her black notebook and wrote 3 things down and closed it and told Zara what to write in each section and how to write it and what words to use and which ones to leave out. They worked on it for 2 Sundays. Gloria signed it on a Tuesday night at 2 in the morning, still in her scrubs, under the kitchen light, with a cup of cold coffee at her elbow. She read it through once before she signed. Her hand was steady. 2 weeks passed. Then a letter arrived. Scholarship approved. Report, Monday, July 14th, 8 a.m. Welcome to Elite Diamond Academy. Mae held the letter and read it twice and said nothing for a long moment. Then she folded it carefully and handed it back to Zara and said, "Go. Show them exactly what you are." She paused. "And pay attention to everything, not just the baseball." Zara nodded. She didn't ask what that meant. She had learned, in 14 months of Sunday mornings, that Mae didn't say things that didn't mean something. Monday morning, Zara took the bus. 40 minutes, 1 transfer, the smell of diesel still in her jacket when she stepped off at Roland Avenue and walked toward the brushed steel gate with her duct-taped glove and her bucket of scuffed baseballs and her name on a letter that said she was welcome. The gate was open. She walked through it, and across the parking lot, through the glass front wall of the building, Ray Dunbar looked up from his desk and saw her coming. His expression didn't change. It didn't need to. The decision had already been made, long before she arrived, in the space between what the scholarship letter said and what Ray Dunbar had always intended. What happened in the first 10 minutes of that first day would set everything in motion. And it started with a pitching evaluation Ray Dunbar had no intention of being fair. The evaluation was Ray Dunbar's idea, announced that first morning with the casual authority of a man who never explains his decisions because he has never needed to. He gathered the full team, 14 boys in matching academy gear, fresh cleats, names embroidered on their chest, in the indoor pitching facility and told them they were going to watch a placement evaluation. "Standard procedure," he said. "Every new athlete goes through it." It was not standard procedure. In 7 years, Ray Dunbar had never held a placement evaluation for a new scholarship athlete in front of the full team. Zara stood at the mound in her gray t-shirt and dark jeans and the duct-taped glove, holding a baseball from her own bucket, because no one had offered her one from the academy's supply. The sensor array on the mound, the pressure plates and the biometric cameras, was switched off. She noticed. She didn't say anything. She threw. First pitch. Clean release. Smooth arc. Hit the center of the target with a crack that made 2 of the boys in the back row exchange a look. Second pitch. Same. Third. Tighter, faster. The ball arriving at the target a fraction of a second earlier than the first 2, the sound slightly sharper. Fourth and fifth. Identical to the third. 5 pitches. 5 targets. 5 hits. The facility was quiet in a way that had not been planned. Ray Dunbar stood at the side with a clipboard he hadn't written anything on. He looked at the mound for a moment. Then he looked at the clipboard. Then he made a sound. Not a laugh exactly. Something smaller and more dismissive than a laugh. The sound of a man recategorizing something he had briefly and incorrectly found impressive. "Cute arm," he said. He didn't look up from the clipboard. "For a girl." He let that land. Gave it a full 3 seconds of silence. Wrong zip code. Wrong background. He clicked his pen. Wrong everything else. He turned to address the team as though Zara had already left the room. Scholarship placement is under administrative review. Until further notice, Mitchell is assigned to support duties: equipment setup, cone placement, ball retrieval. He glanced back at her once, briefly. You'll learn more watching than throwing. Trust me. Brandon Dunbar, standing at the front of the group, said it just loud enough to carry. Thought a scholarship meant you belonged here. Two boys next to him laughed. Ray didn't correct him. He turned a page on his clipboard. Zara said nothing. She picked up her bucket. She set cones for 2 hours while 14 boys threw. She retrieved balls that went wide. She dragged equipment bags from the storage room to the tunnel entrance and back again. She did every task without complaint and without expression, and if any of it landed on her face, nobody saw it. On the third day, a parent called Ray Dunbar directly. She did not raise her voice. She did not use language anyone could repeat. She simply said, in the tone of a woman accustomed to getting what she asked for without having to ask twice, that she was uncomfortable with the current training environment, that her son had mentioned a situation, and that she hoped the academy's standards, the standards she had invested considerably in, were being maintained. Ray thanked her for calling. He said he shared her commitment to the program's integrity. He said the matter was being handled. The matter he handled was Zara. On the fourth day, he called her into his office. The office was what you would expect from a man who needed every room to confirm something about himself. Walnut desk, framed photographs of minor league teams, a window overlooking the main training floor so he could watch without being watched. He gestured at the chair across from his desk. She sat. He picked up a document from the top of the pile in front of him. He didn't turn it to show her. He just held it. This is your scholarship application, he said. The one your coach submitted. The one the committee approved. He tilted his head slightly. You want to know something interesting? The committee that approved it had never seen our facility, never spoken to me. They approved it based on a letter and a video clip somebody emailed them. He set the paper down. That's not how we do things here. Zara watched him, said nothing. I've been doing this 7 years, he said. I know what a real prospect looks like. I know what a real future in this sport looks like. And I know the difference between a kid with genuine potential and a kid who's been told she has potential because telling her that was easier than telling her the truth. He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was almost kind. The almost was the worst part. Your $200 million dream. He picked up the application. I've had 100 kids walk through that door with a dream. You know where most of them are now? Working registers, driving for delivery apps. And that's fine. That's a life, that's honest work. But they wasted 3, 4, 5 years chasing something that was never going to happen because nobody cared enough to be straight with them. And he looked at her directly. I'm being straight with you. Baby, people like you don't make $200 million. People like you clean the offices of people who do. He tore the application. Slow. The way he'd clearly decided he was going to do it before she sat down. He watched her face the entire time, looking for the thing he expected. Tears, protest, the collapse that would confirm his assessment. He did not find it. Zara looked at the torn pieces on the floor. She bent down, picked up every one, folded them into her pocket with the same quiet care she used when she collected her baseballs at the end of a session. She stood. She looked at him once, not with anger, not with tears, with something that made Ray Dunbar shift almost imperceptibly in his chair, a thing he would not have been able to name, and walked out. In the parking lot, she stopped, breathed once, looked at the sky. A black town car was idling at the far end of the lot. It had been there for 20 minutes. The window was down. A man she had never seen before was watching the building's front entrance with an expression that was not casual and not accidental. He had been there yesterday, too. She noticed. She filed it. She kept walking. She did not know yet that the torn pieces in her pocket were about to become the most important document in Baltimore, and she did not know that Ray Dunbar had already done something far worse than tear a piece of paper, something calculated, something systemic, something that would take Conrad Webb exactly 11 days to uncover and 14 minutes to destroy. Zara got out home at 6:15. She sat on the front stoop for a while before going up, not because she was tired, because the apartment was empty. Gloria was already at the clinic, wouldn't be back until 7 in the morning, and empty rooms have a way of making things louder. She needed the street noise first. The man 2 floors up playing something low and slow on a radio. The kids on the corner arguing about something that wouldn't matter tomorrow. The particular sound of Baltimore at early evening, familiar and constant, and indifferent in the way that is sometimes exactly what you need. She held the torn pieces of the application in both hands. 14 pieces. She had counted them on the bus. At 7 o'clock, she got up and walked to Mae's house on Federal Street. Mae opened the door before she knocked. She had a habit of that, appearing at the door at the precise moment someone arrived, as though she'd been listening for footsteps she recognized. She looked at Zara's face, then at the torn pieces in her hand. She stepped back to let her in without saying a word. The kitchen smelled like coffee and something herbal, a smell that had soaked into the walls over decades. Mae's kitchen was the opposite of Dunbar's office. Small, worn, honest. A table with 4 chairs, only one of which ever had anyone sitting in it. Photographs on the refrigerator held by magnets from places Mae had never been. Gifts from students over the years. Mae poured 2 cups of coffee, set one in front of Zara, and sat down. Zara laid the torn pieces on the table between them. She didn't arrange them, just set them down. Mae looked at them for a moment. Then she looked at Zara. "Tell me exactly what he said." Zara told her. All of it. The evaluation, the equipment duty, the office, the words. She said them plainly, without performance. The way she threw, controlled, direct, nothing wasted. When she finished, the kitchen was quiet. Mae wrapped both hands around her coffee cup, stared at the table. "I sent 2 boys there," she said. 4 years ago and 2 years ago. You know what happened to both of them? She didn't wait for an answer. The first one, Ray found a paperwork issue with his residency verification 3 weeks in. Scholarship reassigned. The second one never got past application review. I called 3 times. Third time someone picked up and told me the program was at capacity. She paused. It was February. The deadline was April. Zara was quiet for a moment. "You knew this might happen." "I knew it was possible." Mae set down her cup. "I sent you anyway, because the scholarship was real money from a real committee that Ray Dunbar doesn't control. Because you're not those 2 boys, and because sometimes you have to walk through the door to prove the door shouldn't be closed." She reached across the table and gathered the torn pieces of the application into a neat pile. "He tore the paper," Mae said. "He didn't tear the record. Every velocity reading, every accuracy drill, every Sunday morning for 14 months. That's in the notebook. That doesn't tear." She got up and went to the cabinet above the refrigerator and brought down the black notebook, set it on the table, opened it to the first page. Zara had never seen the inside of the notebook before. Mae had always kept it closed, kept it professional, kept it in her jacket pocket like a private document. Now she turned it so Zara could read. The first entry was dated 14 months ago. 1 number, 68. 1 word, real. Every page after that was dense with entries. Dates, velocity readings, accuracy percentages, release angle notes, adjustment observations. 4 columns per session, 20 sessions per page. 14 months of Sundays accounted for with a precision that had no business existing in a church parking lot run by a 71-year-old woman with no institutional affiliation and no funding. It was a professional scouting development record, more detailed than most organizations kept for their top prospects. Zara read 3 pages without speaking. Then she looked up. "Who are you?" she said. Not accusatory, genuinely asking. Mae closed the notebook. She was quiet for long enough that the question filled the room. 1987, she said finally. There was a women's professional baseball circuit. 8 teams, East Coast, real games, real competition, real talent. I was 22. I was the best arm in the circuit. She said this without pride, just factually, the way you say something that is simply true. They offered me an exhibition slot that last season, not a contract. An exhibition, a way to let the public see a woman pitch in a professional context without actually committing to what that meant. She looked at the notebook. The circuit folded that winter. No one fought for it. No one made the call that needed to be made. I came home to Baltimore, and I stayed. She tapped the notebook once. I spent 30 years watching girls with real arms get told the same things you got told today. I started the clinic because I couldn't keep watching and not do anything. And I kept this notebook because I was waiting. For what? For an arm I could stake something on. She looked at Zara directly. I found it 14 months ago in an alley on Collington Avenue. The kitchen was very quiet. There's a pitch, Mae said. I never threw it in a real game. I invented it in 1986, and I kept it because the game where I needed it never came. She paused. It's yours now. I've been waiting to teach it to you until you needed it. Zara looked at her. What does it do? It rises slightly. Same line as a fastball for the first 40 feet. Then, in the last 8 feet, it drops. Not drifts, drops. Like the floor opened up under it. By the time a hitter's brain processes that the ball isn't where his eyes told him it would be, his swing is already committed to empty air. She let that sit. I call it the vanishing pitch. Outside, a car slowed on Federal Street. Neither of them looked up. There's a man who's been asking about you, Mae said. He was in the parking lot at the academy today. His name is Conrad Webb. She folded her hands on the table. And I think you'd better hear what he has to say. Conrad Webb arrived the next morning. No announcement, no entourage. A black town car parked at the curb outside Mae's house on Federal Street at 8:15 a.m., and a man got out alone. He was 53, medium height, the kind of build that suggested he had once been an athlete and had kept enough of it to remember. He wore a jacket that was expensive without advertising itself and carried nothing, no briefcase, no folder, no prop of any kind. He walked up Mae's front path like someone who had thought carefully about how to make an entrance and decided the best entrance was none at all. Mae opened the door. She had met him once before, 3 years ago, at a youth baseball funding forum in Annapolis, where Conrad had spoken, and Mae had asked the only question from the floor that made him pause before answering. They had exchanged numbers afterward. Neither had used them until last week. He sat at the same kitchen table. Mae poured coffee. Zara sat across from him with her hands in her lap and looked at him the way she looked at everything, quietly, completely, not letting anything go unregistered. He didn't open with pleasantries. I grew up 6 blocks from here, he said. Brentwood Avenue. My father worked the docks. My mother did alterations out of the living room. He looked at the table for a moment, then back at Zara. I made my money in enterprise software, sold the company in 2011, started a second one, sold that in 2018. Spent 10 years as a silent advisor to an MLB front office because I thought proximity to power meant I could change how it worked from inside. He paused. I was wrong about that. He had been at Elite Diamond Academy yesterday. Not by accident. He had been monitoring the program for 2 years, following the trail of scholarship irregularities that Mae had documented and quietly shared with 3 people she trusted. He had arrived at 9 a.m. and sat in the parking lot and watched through the glass front wall with the patience of a man who knew how to wait. He had seen the evaluation. He had seen the equipment duty. He had seen Zara walk into Ray Dunbar's office and walk back out 15 minutes later with torn paper in her pocket and an expression that told him everything he needed to know about what had happened inside. He had filmed all of it through the window. I want to be direct with you, he said. I'm not here to rescue anyone. I'm here because I watched a man destroy a real thing for a small reason. And I've seen that movie before. And I know how it ends if nobody does anything different. He reached into his jacket and took out a single folded piece of paper, slid it across the table. Zara opened it. It was a formal challenge proposal. Structured, precise, every term spelled out. Zara Mitchell pitches to Tyler Holt, 2-time MLB All-Star, career .318 average, 390 home runs, in a public exhibition at Camden Yards. 2 pitches. If Zara strikes Holt out on both, Conrad Webb funds a $200 million foundation in her name, dedicated to baseball programs for black girls and underserved youth nationwide. If Holt connects on either pitch, Conrad Webb donates $10 million to Elite Diamond Academy, endowed in Ray Dunbar's name. Zara read it twice, set it down. Why Tyler Holt? She asked. Because he's the best active hitter in the American League, and everyone knows it. Because the number means something only if the opponent means something. And because Tyler Holt said something on a podcast last month that I think you should hear. Conrad's expression didn't change. He was asked about the viral clip of you at the academy. He laughed. He said, and I'm quoting him directly, "A 13-year-old girl? 2 pitches? I'll do it for charity. This isn't a competition." The kitchen was quiet. For charity, 2 words that were meant as generosity and landed as something much older and much uglier. The implication sitting underneath them like a stone under shallow water. That this was not a real contest. That she was not a real opponent. That his participation was an act of condescension dressed up as kindness. Zara looked at the proposal on the table. When, she said. That was all she said. Not can I do this, not what if I lose, just when. Conrad looked at her for a moment. Something in his face settled. 8 weeks. That night was the kitchen table conversation. Gloria came home at 7:15 a.m. still in her scrubs and found Zara and the proposal and made coffee and sat down and read every word. She read it the way she read everything important, thoroughly, without rushing, without letting her face show what she was thinking, until she was finished. When she set it down, she looked at her daughter for a long time. "You don't have to do this to prove anything," she said. Zara looked back at her. Her voice was quiet and certain and came from somewhere that didn't have room for doubt. "I'm not doing it to prove it to them." A pause. "I'm doing it for you." Gloria's jaw tightened. She looked at the table. She looked at her hands. She looked at the schedule pinned to the corkboard by the door, the color-coded shifts, the nights away, the years of small gaps closed with smaller resources. She picked up a pen, signed the bottom of the proposal. Then she looked at Conrad, who was standing in the kitchen doorway where Mae had brought him after Gloria arrived, and said one sentence in a voice that did not shake. "If anything happens to my daughter in that stadium, there is no amount of money that covers it." Conrad nodded. Understood. Mae, standing beside him, said nothing. Mae, standing, but her hand found Zara's shoulder and stayed there. 8 weeks. That was what they had. The question nobody at that table asked out loud, because asking it felt like inviting the answer, was the only question that actually mattered. How do you force a billionaire World Series broadcaster and a proud, cornered coach to agree to a challenge that humiliates them both if they lose? Conrad Webb had an answer to that. And it started not with a phone call, not with a legal document, but with something Ray Dunbar had done that he thought no one would ever find. Conrad Webb spent 11 days finding everything. He didn't hire investigators. He didn't need to. He had spent 10 years inside an MLB front office learning how institutions hide things, not in locked cabinets or encrypted files, but in plain language buried in plain documents that nobody reads because nobody expects them to matter. He knew how to read a nonprofit filing. He knew how to trace a scholarship fund's disbursement record. He knew how to follow the distance between what a program says it does and what its financial statements show it actually did. What he found on day 4 was the medical form. Every athlete enrolled at Elite Diamond Academy was required to complete a performance readiness form, a proprietary internal evaluation document that Ray Dunbar had designed himself 7 years ago, ostensibly to track athlete development. In practice, it functioned as something else, a gatekeeping instrument, circulated not just internally, but shared with 9 other regional youth baseball programs as part of an informal network Dunbar had built with other academy directors over the years, a coalition of coaches who shared athlete evaluations across programs, ostensibly for development coordination. In practice, if Dunbar filed a negative assessment on an athlete, that assessment followed the athlete to every other program in the network. Zara's form had been completed the morning of her first day, before the evaluation, before she had thrown a single pitch at the academy. Ray Dunbar had filled in her assessment column in advance. Athletically underdeveloped. Coordination inconsistent. Recommend. Recreational league only. Not suitable for competitive development track. He had distributed it to all 9 programs in the network on the afternoon of the day he tore her application. He hadn't just closed one door. He had closed 10 doors simultaneously, without Zara knowing any of them existed, without any process or review or appeal, based on an evaluation he completed before he watched her throw. Conrad found this on day 4. He sat with it for a long time before he did anything. On day 7, he found the replacement, Zara's scholarship slot, funded by the Greater Baltimore Community Athletic Fund, a nonprofit whose mandate was explicitly to support athletes from economically disadvantaged zip codes, had not been canceled after Dunbar removed Zara. It had been reassigned, within 48 hours, to a 13-year-old named Garrett Pullman. Garrett Pullman lived in Ruxton, a suburb with a median household income of $187,000. His father, Douglas Pullman, had donated $45,000 to Elite Diamond Academy's capital campaign the previous fiscal year. His name was on a plaque in the trophy hallway. The scholarship fund had a legally binding requirement that all awards go to athletes meeting specific economic eligibility criteria. Garrett Pullman did not meet a single one of them. Ray Dunbar had taken a scholarship meant for a black girl from East Baltimore and given it to the son of one of his biggest donors. And he had done it in writing, with paperwork, leaving a trail so clean it suggested he had never once considered that anyone would look. Conrad had everything he needed by day 11. He did not go to the media first. He went to the scholarship committee. He delivered a complete documented package to the Greater Baltimore Community Athletic Fund's Board of Directors, the pre-filled assessment form, the network distribution list, the Pullman reassignment with full financial documentation, and a comparison of Zara's actual recorded velocities, sourced from Mae's notebook, notarized, against Dunbar's written evaluation. The committee froze the Academy's accreditation pending investigation within 24 hours. Then Conrad released the footage. Not the challenge proposal, not the legal documents, just the footage from the Academy window. Zara's evaluation, the equipment duty, the office visit, the torn application, edited to 90 seconds, uploaded from an anonymous account on a Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. By midnight, it had 400,000 views. By Wednesday morning, it had 2 million. The headline wrote itself across every sports blog and news aggregator simultaneously. Coach rips up black girl's baseball scholarship, calls her $200 million dream an embarrassment. The comments split into two camps immediately, and both camps were angry, just at different targets, and the argument between them generated the kind of sustained engagement that algorithms reward with reach. Within 48 hours, it was on national sports radio. Within 72, it was on television. Then the old footage surfaced. 3 incidents. Different years. Different athletes. All black. All from zip codes south of the expressway. A boy told his arm wasn't suited to competitive development, now pitching Division I college ball. A girl asked to leave a showcase because her equipment didn't meet program standards. The equipment standard wasn't written anywhere, applied to no one else. A family told their scholarship application contained residency verification issues, the same family that had provided the same documents as every other applicant that year. Nobody had connected them before. They were isolated incidents, separated by time, easy to dismiss individually. Together, they were a pattern so clear it didn't need anyone to explain it. Hashtag Zara Mitchell trended for 4 days. On the 3rd day, Ray Dunbar held a press conference. He wore a suit. He was calm. He spoke carefully, with the measured composure of a man who had prepared for this and believed his preparation was sufficient. A reporter asked directly, "Did race play a role in your decision?" Dunbar smiled. Not a nervous smile, a patient one. The smile of a man who had answered this question, or questions like it, in his own head many times, and had arrived at an answer he was satisfied with. "I don't see color," he said. "I see potential, and I didn't see it." The clip of him saying it was shared 6 million times in 36 hours. It did more damage than the original footage, because the original footage showed a man acting badly in a moment of anger. This showed something colder. A man entirely at peace with what he had done. Certain, still untroubled. That certainty was the thing that broke the last hesitation in rooms where decisions were made. Tyler Holt, 2 days later, went on a podcast and laughed. "A 13-year-old girl? 2 pitches? I'll do it for charity. This isn't a competition." He meant it as magnanimity. The internet heard condescension wrapped in good intentions, which is sometimes the most infuriating combination of all. For charity. 2 words that ended the debate. Holt's management accepted the formal challenge the next morning. Dunbar, facing accreditation suspension and the Pullman investigation, agreed to attend as a named party. The event was set. Camden Yards, 6 weeks out. National broadcast rights sold in 48 hours. Ticket sales crashed the website in 9 minutes. In a church parking lot on a Tuesday morning at 5:30 a.m., a 13-year-old girl in a gray t-shirt was working on a pitch nobody had ever seen thrown in a real game. Mae stood behind her with a stopwatch and the black notebook and didn't say much. She didn't need to. The trap had been set. The only thing left was the pitch. And the night before the exhibition, Gloria ironed Zara's jersey at the kitchen table and said quietly, almost to herself, "Your grandmother would have loved this." Zara looked up from the glove she was oiling. "Tell me about her." Gloria paused with the iron, smiled at something far away. What Gloria said next would stay with Zara on the mound the following evening, through 2 pitches that would change everything. Camden Yards on a Friday evening in August looks like a city deciding to leave in something. The light comes in low and golden from the west, catching the brick facade of the warehouse beyond right field and turning it the color of old copper. The flags along the upper deck move in the harbor breeze. The grass is the particular shade of green that only exists under stadium lights coming on at dusk. That green that doesn't belong to nature exactly, but to the specific agreement between a city and its team that this place matters. 38,000 people filled every seat by 7 p.m. Not the usual Friday crowd. Not the families with foam fingers and the groups of co-workers splitting a beer. This was different. This was Baltimore showing up for one of its own. The specific energy of a city that has watched its people get overlooked for long enough that when one of them gets a real moment on a real stage, the whole city feels the weight of it personally. People who hadn't been to a baseball game in years were here. People who had driven in from the East Side in church clothes. People who had printed photographs of Zara from the viral clip and brought them on hand-painted signs. Section 34, Row J, Seat 8. Ray Dunbar, required to attend as a named party in the formal challenge agreement. He sat alone, arms crossed, jaw set. The face of a man who had decided in advance that whatever happened tonight would not change his assessment of anything. Tyler Holt entered from the third base tunnel at 7:20. Custom batting gloves with his initials in gold stitching. A bat he had used since his second All-Star season, weighted and balanced to the precise specifications of his swing. A career point .318 average, 390 home runs. The kind of body language that comes from 15 years of professional baseball, telling you that you are exactly where you are supposed to be. He waved to the crowd, tipped his helmet, smiled the easy smile of a champion who had agreed to this because it cost him nothing. He took his practice cuts at the plate, smooth, powerful, unhurried. The kind of swing that had made grown men with 95-mile-per-hour fastballs look foolish on national television. The stadium gave him a generous hand. He acknowledged it with another tip of the helmet. Then the first base tunnel. Zara walked out alone. Gray hoodie, dark jeans, the duct-taped Rawlings glove on her left hand, her bucket of scuffed baseballs in her right. No entourage, no walk-up music, no choreographed entrance. She walked the way she walked to the alley on Collington Avenue every morning, purposeful, unhurried, carrying something the crowd couldn't see but could feel. The roar that greeted her was not the roar for Holt. It was something warmer and more complicated. The sound of 38,000 people recognizing something in a 13-year-old girl, in a gray hoodie that they couldn't quite articulate but felt in the chest. She reached the mound, set her bucket down, adjusted her glove. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't look at Dunbar in Section 34. She looked at the catcher's mitt 60 feet and 6 inches away and nowhere else. Behind the backstop, Mae Holloway stood with the black notebook open to the last page. 2 words in her handwriting. Finish it. She held it up briefly, angled so only Zara could read it. Then she closed it and put it in her pocket and folded her hands and was still. Conrad Webb sat in his box seat behind the first baseline. He had not moved since the gates opened. He was watching everything and saying nothing. Kevin Marsh, MLB scout, sat in the front row behind home plate with a stopwatch in one hand and a notebook in the other. He had seen the clip. He had called Mae. He was here because in 30 years of scouting, he had learned that the things worth seeing rarely announced themselves in advance. The Jumbotron changed. The countdown timer disappeared. The screen went black. The stadium noise dropped instinctively, the way noise drops when something shifts in the air. A film began. It opened on Federal Street, Mae Holloway's house. Then the church parking lot on a Sunday morning. Gray dawn light, chalk targets on asphalt, a 71-year-old woman with a stopwatch, and a 13-year-old girl throwing in the quiet before the neighborhood woke up. Raw footage, close and intimate. Then the image shifted. Archival footage. 1987. Women's professional baseball circuit. A young woman on a mound, mid-pitch, left arm extended, the particular violence and grace of a perfect delivery frozen in grainy film stock. Text on screen. Mae Holloway, 1987. Best arm in the circuit. Offered an exhibition slot. Never a contract. The circuit folded. The screen showed the newspaper announcement. Women's Professional Baseball League to cease operations following final season. Text. Mae Holloway came home to Baltimore. She never left. For 30 years, she trained girls in a church parking lot for free, waiting for an arm she could stake something on. Then, she found it on Collington Avenue, East Side, Baltimore. 5:30 a.m. A 13-year-old girl throwing against a brick wall. The footage shifted again. Zara in the alley. The chalk circle worn thin from 3 years of the same ball hitting the same spot. Then the kitchen at 2 a.m. Gloria in scrubs signing the scholarship application under the kitchen light. Then the academy. The evaluation. The torn paper. The stadium did not cheer. It made a sound that was not cheering, something lower and wider, 38,000 people absorbing the same information at the same moment. The collective sound of a city understanding what it was watching. Cameras swept the crowd. Found Gloria in section 22 gripping the seat arms with both hands, jaw set so tight the muscles in her neck stood like cables. Found Mae behind the backstop, eyes forward, expression unreadable. Found Conrad in his box, completely still. Found Ray Dunbar in section 34, row J, seat 8. He was staring at the Jumbotron. His arms had uncrossed. His hands were in his lap. The camera held on his face for 3 full seconds, long enough for 38,000 people and every television viewer watching the national broadcast to see the expression of a man confronting the distance between what he had done and what it looked like from the outside. Then the screen went dark. The umpire stepped to the plate. Silence fell over Camden Yards. Not the silence of waiting. The silence of 38,000 people deciding, simultaneously and without coordination, that this moment deserved to be heard. Mae's voice, too quiet for any microphone. This is what we built it for. Zara set her feet on the rubber, adjusted her father's, Mae's, duct-taped glove against her palm. She looked at the catcher's mitt. 60 feet and 6 inches. Pitch 1 of 2. What happened next would be recorded on 72 different phones, broadcast on 4 national networks, and replayed 19 million times. And it began with a fastball that made a 2-time All-Star swing at air and made a commentator go completely silent for 4 full seconds on live television. The stadium held its breath, not a metaphor, a physical thing. 38,000 people pulling air in and not releasing it. The collective inhale of a crowd that has stopped performing attention and started actually paying it. The harbor breeze dropped. The flags along the upper deck went still. The stadium lights hummed in the sudden quiet, with a sound that had always been there, but was only audible now. Zara stood on the mound. She had thrown in this silence before. Not in a stadium, not in front of 38,000 people, but in the alley on Collington Avenue at 5:30 a.m. when the neighborhood was still dark, and the only sound was the ball and the wall and the particular quality of her own focus. That silence and this silence were the same thing in different rooms. She knew how to live inside it. She adjusted the glove, cracked leather, duct tape on the thumb. 4 years of Sunday mornings worked into the grain of it. She pressed the seams of the baseball against her fingertips, found the grip, settled her feet on the rubber. Tyler Holt dug in at the plate. He was not performing anymore. The walk-up, the helmet tip, the easy smile, that was for the crowd, the broadcast, the version of this evening that was a charity exhibition and nothing more. This, now, with a 13-year-old girl 60 feet and 6 inches away, staring at him with the absolute stillness of someone who had been preparing for this moment for longer than he had been taking it seriously. This was something else. His professional instincts had taken over without his permission. Feet shoulder width, back foot dug in, bat cocked, hands loose. 15 years of muscle memory arranging his body into the configuration that had produced 390 home runs. His eyes locked on her release point. Zara wound up. The motion was clean. No telegraphing, no hesitation. The smooth uncoiling of a delivery Mae had refined over 14 months of Sunday mornings until every unnecessary movement had been stripped away, and what remained was pure mechanics. Her arm came through in a single whip crack, and the ball left her hand. 70 miles per hour, 60 feet and 6 inches. The time it takes a hummingbird's wing to beat once. Holt's eyes tracked it. Every signal his brain received said fastball. Trajectory, spin, release angle, everything calibrated against 15 years of professional pattern recognition. His timing window opened. The calculation completed. He swung. Full rotation, hips driving through, hands accelerating through the zone with the controlled violence that had sent baseballs over outfield walls in 22 major league stadiums. The ball was already in the catcher's mitt. The crack of leather on leather echoed through Camden Yards, like a door slamming shut on something that deserved to be closed. Holt's bat finished its arc through empty air. Strike one. 1 second of absolute silence. Then the jumbotron, 70 miles per hour. The broadcast commentator opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. 4 full seconds of dead air on national television before he said, carefully, That translates to roughly 94 miles per hour at regulation distance. He was off by 2 to 3 miles per hour in his conversion, the actual equivalent closer to 91, 92. But nobody in the stadium was checking the math. 38,000 people were looking at a 13-year-old girl who had just made a 2-time All-Star swing at air, and the number on the jumbotron, right or wrong, was doing what numbers do when they're large enough. It made the invisible visible. Holt stepped out of the box. He did not look at the crowd. He did not look at the broadcast camera. He stared at the mound with an expression that had nothing performative left in it. The expression of a professional athlete whose internal model of a situation has just been contradicted by direct evidence and who is in the process, rapidly, of rebuilding it from scratch. He stepped back in, dug his back foot deeper, choked up a 1/4 inch on the bat. A small adjustment, barely visible from the stands. The kind of micro-correction that happens below the level of conscious decision. His body telling him, this is not what we thought it was. In the front row, Kevin Marsh wrote a number in his notebook and underlined it twice. In section 34, Ray Dunbar's hands were on his knees. Mae, behind the backstop, was completely still. Her lips were moving, too quiet for any microphone. The same thing she said at the end of every Sunday morning session for 14 months. Trust the work. Zara looked in at the catcher's mitt. She found the second grip, the one Mae had spent 6 weeks teaching her. The modified release, the slight wrist adjustment invisible from the batter's box, the thing that made the ball behave like a fastball for 40 feet, and then do something a fastball has no business doing. She wound up. Same arm slot. Same motion. Identical in every way that Holt's eyes and 15 years of professional pattern recognition could detect. The vanishing pitch. It left her hand on the same line as the fastball. Same trajectory, same spin axis, same everything for the first 40 feet. Holt's brain processed the information and reached a conclusion and sent the signal. Fastball, belt high, swing now. He swung with everything. 2-time All-Star, career .318, 390 home runs. Every bit of it. The full commitment of a professional athlete who has made a decision and is executing it completely. In the last 8 feet, the ball dropped. Not drifted. Not faded. Dropped. Straight down as though the air beneath it had simply stopped providing support. As though someone had cut a string. 18 inches of vertical movement in the last fraction of a second of flight, arriving at knee height in the same moment that Tyler Holt's bat was crossing belt height with everything he had behind it. His swing passed through empty air. The ball settled into the catcher's mitt, with a sound that was somehow softer than the first pitch. A quiet leather pop, almost gentle. The sound of something inevitable arriving exactly on schedule. Strike 2, 1 full second of silence. Then Camden Yards came apart. Not a cheer, an eruption. The sound of 38,000 people releasing something they had been holding. Not just for the duration of this at-bat, but for longer than that. For years. For every time a door closed quietly and no one said anything. Strangers grabbing strangers, people standing on seats, someone in the upper deck screaming a name over and over that wasn't Holt's. Gloria collapsed forward in her seat with both hands over her face, shoulders shaking, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere that doesn't have a name. Years of double shifts and color-coded schedules and signing things at 2 a.m. breaking open all at once. Mae dropped her head. Both hands on the backstop fence, shoulders moving, 71 years old and 37 years of waiting, and a pitch she invented in 1986 and never threw in a real game. Thrown, finally, by someone else, in the most real game there was. Conrad Webb stood in his box with his fist raised and tears on his face and didn't make a sound. Zara hadn't moved from the mound. She looked up at the lights. The big white stadium lights burning against the Baltimore night sky. And her lips moved. One word. Too quiet for any microphone. Too quiet for anyone except the woman whose name she carried in the duct tape on a borrowed glove. Grandma. Tyler Holt stood in the plate for a long moment. Then he set his bat on the ground, removed his helmet, and walked slowly to the mound. He stopped in front of her. His face was not defeated. It was rearranged, reorganized around a fact it had not previously contained. He extended his hand. "Where have you been?" She looked up at him steadily. "Church parking lot, Baltimore." He shook his head slowly, the way you shake your head at something that refuses to be disbelieved, and shook her hand. Then he walked off the field. The camera found Ray Dunbar in section 34. He had not moved. His hands were still on his knees. His face was the face of a man sitting inside the wreckage of his own certainty, in a building full of people who now knew exactly what that certainty had cost. Conrad descended from his box, crossed the field, stopped in front of Zara, and looked at her with the expression of a man who has just watched something he believed in prove itself true. 2 pitches, he said. $200 million. What do you want to do with it? Zara didn't hesitate, didn't think. The answer came the same way her pitches came. Fast, clean, from somewhere deep and certain. Make sure no one else gets their paper torn. The field microphones caught it. The Jumbotron broadcast it. 38,000 people heard it. The sound that followed shook the press box windows. 19 million views in 36 hours. The vanishing pitch. Slow motion replay. The ball traveling straight, 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 and then dropping 18 inches in the last 8 feet like the floor had opened underneath it, became the most shared sports clip of the year. Every platform, every time zone, every language. People who had never watched a baseball game forwarded it with captions that said, "I've watched this 40 times, and I still don't understand what I'm seeing, and this isn't real, and somebody explain this to me right now." A retired Hall of Fame pitcher watched the replay on live television. He had been brought in as a studio analyst to provide expert commentary on what was, officially, a charity exhibition. He watched the slow-motion clip 3 times without speaking. The host asked him twice for his reaction. On the 3rd request, he looked at the camera and said, "That's not a youth pitch. That's not a women's league pitch. I don't know what that is. I've never seen that before." The clip of him saying it was shared 8 million times. Mae Holloway's name became the second story. Journalists pulled the 1987 records within 48 hours. The women's professional baseball circuit. The statistics, the rosters, the contemporaneous scouting reports that used words like exceptional and generational in reference to a 22-year-old left-hander from Federal Street, Baltimore. The exhibition offer. The folded league. The 37 years of silence after. Former circuit players, women in their 50s and 60s scattered across the country, found their phones ringing for the first time in decades. They gave interviews sitting at kitchen tables and in backyards, speaking carefully at first and then with increasing directness about what the circuit had been, what it could have been, and what was taken from the shem when the league folded and no one in any position of power made the call to save it. The narrative expanded the way real stories always do, outward, in rings, each ring touching something larger than the one before. Mae Holloway's erasure. The erasure of the circuit. The pattern of gatekeeping in youth baseball that Ray Dunbar's documents had made undeniable. The cost, measured in decades and in human lives, of a system that confused access with merit and called the confusion a standard. On a Tuesday morning, MLB issued a formal statement acknowledging the 1987 women's professional baseball circuit and expressing what their communications department called just deep institutional regret for the circumstances that led to its closure. Not a full apology. Institutional language rarely goes that far. Too many lawyers in the room. Too much awareness of what full accountability costs. But it was the first time in 37 years that a body with actual power had spoken about what happened in 1987 as something that required acknowledgement rather than erasure. Gloria read the statement at the kitchen table. Mae was sitting across from her. Gloria read it twice, slowly, then set it down and reached across the table and put her hand over Mae's and said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, "They finally said your name." Mae looked at the table. Her jaw moved once. She nodded. The Greater Baltimore Community Athletic Fund filed a formal civil complaint against Elite Diamond Academy for misappropriation of scholarship funds. The Pullman reassignment, fully documented, was the centerpiece. Ray Dunbar resigned from the academy 4 days after the exhibition. His resignation letter cited a desire to pursue other opportunities and thanked the academy's families for their support. It did not mention Zara Mitchell. It did not mention the performance readiness form. It did not mention the 9 programs in his network whose assessment files Conrad Webb had already forwarded to the relevant oversight bodies. The Academy's accreditation was formally revoked 6 weeks later. The $200 registration fee for the scholarship showcase was eliminated the same week Dunbar resigned. The scholarship committee, now operating under new oversight requirements, restructured its entire selection process. 3 new scholarship slots were created and funded, each carrying a legally binding requirement for economic eligibility verification. The first 3 recipients were girls. Conrad Webb held a press conference at Camden Yards 3 weeks after the exhibition. He stood at a podium at home plate, the same plate Tyler Holt had stood at, and announced the establishment of the foundation in its full form. The Simone Webb Foundation, named for his daughter, $200 million, dedicated to baseball programs for Black girls and underserved youth across the country, with a specific mandate to fund coaching development, equipment access, and scholarship pipelines in communities where the infrastructure for those things had never existed. Zara was named the foundation's first ambassador. At the press conference, Conrad said one sentence that made every headline: "This money was never mine. It belonged to every girl who got her paper torn and had no one to help her pick up the pieces. Zara just made sure it got back to them." Kevin Marsh offered Zara a formal placement in the National Youth Development Program the following week. She accepted. On her first day, she arrived carrying 2 things: a new equipment bag from Conrad and Mae's duct-taped Rawlings glove. Mae closed the Sunday's morning clinic. She donated every ball, every target, every piece of equipment to the Greater Grace Temple Community Center, which turned the church parking lot into a permanent free training space. On the wall of the church facing the parking lot, someone painted a mural. 2 figures. A young woman mid-pitch on the left, 1987 written beneath her feet. A girl mid-pitch on the right, this year's date beneath hers. The same motion, the same arm angle, an unbroken line across 37 years. Brandon Dunbar sent Zara a message through the league system 10 days after the exhibition. It took him 3 drafts to write it, which she didn't know, but which was evident in the careful plainness of the final version. "I watched every practice and never said anything. I should have. I'm sorry." Zara read it twice, wrote back 4 words. "Come to Mae's parking lot." He showed up the following Sunday at 5:20 a.m., 10 minutes early, wearing regular clothes and carrying nothing, because he didn't know what to bring. Zara was already there, warming up against the chalk circle on the asphalt that had been repainted so many times, the layers of chalk had built up into a faint raised texture on the brick. She looked at him once, nodded once. They threw for 2 hours without talking much. Mae watched from the folding chair she kept by the wall. She had her notebook. She was writing things down. The last image of this story is small and quiet and almost missed if you're looking for something larger. Dawn mist on the asphalt of a church parking lot in East Baltimore. A chalk circle on a brick wall, worn thin in the center from years of the same ball finding the same spot. A 13-year-old girl on an invisible mound, adjusting a duct-taped glove that belongs to a woman who never got her game, winding up in the gray light before the neighborhood wakes. She throws. The ball finds the circle. The sound it makes, clean, certain, exactly where she aimed it, carries down the empty street and disappears. She picks up the next ball. Ray Dunbar tore the paper because he thought the paper was the dream. It wasn't. The dream lived in a chalk circle on a brick wall, in a black notebook full of Sunday mornings, in a woman who carried a pitch for 37 years, waiting for the right arm to throw it. Nobody can tear what they can't see. And the things built in the quiet, in alleys, in church parking lots, in kitchens at 2 a.m., have a way of outlasting everything built to keep them out. If this story found you at the right moment, leave a comment and tell me what your chalk circle is, the thing you keep coming back to, the thing nobody else can see yet. I read every one. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. Because the next story is already waiting. And it starts the same way all the true ones do, with someone being told they don't belong.